Yeah.
You know, it feels like every other week is a good week for college football. Week 10, we had 2 top 10 matchups, 4 ranked versus ranked matchups in all. In week 11, we have 0 ranked versus ranked matchups. It's crazy. It's such an uneventful weekend of college football that College Game Day chose to go to the Masters down in Georgia. Still a pretty cool sight, but there wasn't a game worth going to. But we still found 5 games that we think will be the biggest of Week 11. 5 games that are important for some of the top teams in the country and important for some teams when it comes to their individual division races and their conference races as well. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We're going to get started here by sharing our predictions for our 5 biggest games going into Week 11. And again, for more analysis on some of these games and our spread picks for these games, make sure to go check out everything down in our description below. Sign up for our expert picks, our newsletter, and everything over on BetNow and our Patreon site as well. Let's go ahead and start up here at the top, though. The Holy War. You know, usually when you hear Holy War, you think of Utah and BYU. To me, that's Holy War number 1. That's the one I always think of. But Notre Dame and Boston College, they are one as well, because Notre Dame and Boston College are just the 2 Catholic universities at the FBS level. They are the only 2 Catholic universities at the FBS level playing football, Fighting Irish and Boston College. And Notre Dame, as we all know, coming off a monumental victory over what was then the top-ranked team in the country in Clemson. Could this be a letdown game for Notre Dame? Look, anytime you pull off a big upset, you're coming off a big win, you're high on yourself, there's always that chance and that opportunity for a letdown. You don't perform as well as you did the week before. And let me tell you, this Boston College team, they're no pushover. They've been one of the more pleasant surprises of 2020. Jeff Hafley has the Eagles sitting at 5-3 this season. Just like Notre Dame, Boston College took Clemson down to the wire in Death Valley. Again, I know Clemson was down a lot of defensive starters. I know they didn't have Trevor Lawrence. Boston College still made it a game, 34-28. The Eagles, they've alternated wins and losses ever since they started 2-0. So it's been win-loss, 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 and now you're looking at this. If the pattern's going to continue, it means they're going to lose on Saturday because the Eagles are coming off a 3-point victory over Syracuse. At the end of the day, this game to me solely comes down to quarterback play, more so from Phil Jurkovec and not Ian Book, because Boston College's run game is non-existent. And even if they had a decent one, Notre Dame would shut them down. They're allowing just 85.1 rushing yards per game and just shut down Travis Etienne last week. Jurkovec has over 2,000 yards and 15 touchdowns this season. Boston College, they do a great job, Jurkovec included, of not turning over the football. They haven't turned the ball over in their last 3 games. But if it's just Phil Jurkovec and that's it, Boston College to me doesn't stand a chance, because their defense is allowing over 140 rushing yards per game, and they're going up against one of the more quiet and surprising running backs in the country this year in Kyren Williams, who has rushed for 740 yards and 10 touchdowns in 2020, had 140 of those yards and 3 of those touchdowns last week against Clemson. Notre Dame, I do not think, comes into this game and disappoints. It might be closer than expected. It might be close for a while. The Fighting Irish are going to pull away, and they are going to capture their 8th straight victory over the Eagles. This is a game you need to keep your eye on. Notre Dame, the number 2 team in the country now, undefeated. But they do get the win on the road against Boston College. Let's go down to the SEC. Look, you can't not put Alabama and LSU up here on the board. I know this is not the marquee matchup we were all hoping for. It's not the marquee Alabama-LSU game that we've seen in years past. But you have to have this one up here when it's Alabama and LSU, because it always has that chance and that opportunity to provide for an exciting SEC West matchup. But this year, it might not be the case. Alabama, the new number 1 team of the country, thanks to Notre Dame, they enter this game against LSU, the reigning national champions, as 23.5-point favorites. Holy cow. I would love to go back and do some research and find out the last time that LSU was that big of an underdog, especially to Alabama. Just period. I mean, 23.5 points, and that could fluctuate between now and Saturday. But here's the thing. Alabama has not lost in Baton Rouge since 2010. They have not lost in Baton Rouge since 2010. Alabama certainly going to come into this game fired up, angry, because last year LSU snapped their 8-game losing streak to Alabama in Tuscaloosa, beating the Crimson Tide 46-41. So Alabama's streak ended against LSU last year. That game really, really hurt their playoff chances. I know the Auburn game did too, but that one put a damper on it. That one certainly put a damper on it. And now you come into this game, and you're facing an LSU team that's allowing 33.6 points per game, 12th in the SEC. So third to last, 12, 13, 14. 12th in the SEC. They're allowing 478.6 yards per game. And the big number you got to circle here is they're allowing 335.2 passing yards per game. Mac Jones, a guy that's thrown for over nearly 2,200 yards and 16 touchdowns this year, he's going to have a field day against his LSU secondary unless Ed Ogeron fixed some things in the bye week. You know, Coach O just came out and he said, we're not really focused on Alabama right now. During the bye week, we're not focused on Alabama. We're focused on fixing ourselves. Will LSU do that? The Tigers are 2-3. They just lost to Auburn 48-11. Will Miles Brennan, will he be fully healthy for this game? If he's not, LSU certainly doesn't stand a chance because TJ Finley or Max Johnson, they're not leading the Tigers to a win over Alabama and Nick Saban. The Tigers, LSU, their best chance is to get Miles Brennan back, and their best chance is to try to slow down Mac Jones. If Brennan is back, the offense might be able to hang around a little bit. But Alabama's defense is improving. Alabama's defense is improving. Ever since their bad performance against Ole Miss, they've allowed just an average of 13.6 points per game over their last 3 games. They're starting to heat up. We're starting to see this Alabama team take shape, take form. And they're acting like the Alabama team that we always knew they were under Nick Saban. This is a big game for Alabama, a bigger game for Alabama than it is for LSU because the Tigers are not going to be in contention for the SEC West Division like we thought they could have been a few weeks ago. I think the Tide roll big in this one down in Death Valley. I know LSU fans are going to hate to hear it. You're going to hate to see it. But Nick Saban and the Tide are not letting this one slip away, and they're going to win it convincingly. Let's go down to the Big Ten. This is a tricky game here, guys. This is a very sticky situation. Number 13, Wisconsin at Michigan. This, like Alabama LSU, was going to be one of the more highly anticipated games and a game that we all expected to be a ranked versus ranked matchup just a few weeks ago. And thanks to LSU and Michigan, it is not like that. But you can also blame Wisconsin here. Now, look, you can't help getting COVID. No one wants to get it. No one wants to get it. No one likes to get it. No one does it on purpose. But this game is crucial here. If Wisconsin has to cancel this game, because they have canceled their last 2 games, they have had to cancel the last 2 games due to coronavirus. If they cancel this game, they're done. They will not make the Big Ten championship because they have to play a minimum of 6 games. And they will have been 4 games into the season after this one, having played just 1. So the health of Wisconsin, the amount of COVID cases at Wisconsin is something we're going to monitor over the remainder of this week. There's a good chance this one will get canceled. But let's say it isn't. Let's just say it isn't and that it happens. This is a must-win game for Michigan. Not Wisconsin, for Michigan. They just lost to Michigan State 2 weeks ago. They just lost by 17 to Indiana last week as 3.5-point favorites. The Wolverines are under 500 through 3 games for the first time since 2008, and Jim Harbaugh can basically start packing his bags if he loses this game, although he may have already started to do that. So what's going to happen here in Ann Arbor? First off, for Wisconsin, will they play, and if they do, who's quarterback? Probably not going to be Graham Mertz. Mertz was the one that kind of started this whole COVID outbreak within the Wisconsin football program. Not pointing fingers or blaming him for it, but he was the first major case, and it kind of all started to spread from there. Mertz was a sensation in their first game against Illinois. If he's here against Michigan, no doubt in my mind Wisconsin wins this game. But he's supposed to quarantine for 3 weeks. This Saturday should mark 3 weeks. He's not going to play, in theory, against Michigan. So if the Badgers play, who starts at quarterback? That's the million-dollar question. Michigan, can they find their defense? Usually Michigan's defense is a strength for the team. It's funny. It's like Michigan can never put together a complete team. The defense is always a strength. The offense is lackluster. This year they both are kind of lackluster, but the offense might be a tad bit better than a defense that's allowing 29.7 points per game and 411.7 yards per game. The key number here, though, guys, and something that could benefit Michigan here if the game's played, is that they're allowing 287.3 passing yards per game. Well, if Wisconsin starts their third, fourth string quarterback, I don't think they're going to be able to exploit that weak secondary, which means that Michigan can mostly hone in on the run. Obviously, a strength for Wisconsin always has been under Paul Chryst, and even back, over a decade ago, like Brett Bielema, guys like that. Joe Milton, to me, has done a better job than expected. 869 yards, 4 touchdowns this season. And in a game like this, a game that feels like a must-win for the Wolverines in Ann Arbor, one where Wisconsin's going to be very, very sluggish, having not played in 3 weeks, down with maybe a lot of COVID cases within players and coaches alike, I'm picking Michigan to win this game. Picking the Wolverines to wake up, rise to the occasion, and get the job done at home. Now, you see there's an asterisk there. Obviously, that's because there's a chance this game could not be played. And if major changes are made to Wisconsin's roster, if somehow Mertz is eligible to play, or if we feel that the certain players that are eligible we feel comfortable with against Michigan, we might switch this game. We might switch it and go with the Badgers. But right now, I'm going to ride with Michigan, and I have a feeling I'm going to ride with them up until the end. If there's a change, it will be posted, of course, to our Twitter account, @GridironExpert. But we're riding with the Wolverines here. I know many people aren't going to agree with it, but I really feel like this is the game they have to win, and they finally rise to the occasion and get the job done against a Wisconsin team that under normal circumstances would win. But in a year like this, in a situation like this, I think they struggle. Another Big Ten showdown that you need to watch. Why is number 23 Northwestern at Purdue on our big board? Why is that an important game? It's an important game because if this game here is not played between Wisconsin and Michigan, Wisconsin more than likely is done. They are not eligible for the Big Ten title game. They cannot win the West. Which means that the winner of Northwestern and Purdue will be the front runner for the West. You heard that correctly. There's a good chance that Northwestern or Purdue could be in the Big Ten championship game, and that the winner of this game on Saturday will be the front runner in the Big Ten West. That's the type of year that we're having. And look, these two teams are good. They're actually both very surprising. Let's start with Northwestern, a 3-0 team that murdered Maryland, who just went on the road and murdered Penn State. Came back down 17 against Iowa, won at Kinnick Stadium. And then just this last week defeated Nebraska. Purdue, they've been dealing with a bunch of COVID cases. Without Rondale Moore, didn't have their coach and Jeff Brom for, I believe, their first game of the year. Yet they're 2-0. 2-0 with that win over Illinois, and also a season opener against Iowa. A solid team. A solid Iowa team that just murdered Michigan State, which beat Michigan. You see how it goes. It's this big circle, and it's just like the circle of life, and the Big Ten's just beating up on each other. But let's look at the numbers here. Purdue, they beat Northwestern 24-22 last year. Two teams that really weren't all that good. And they snapped a 5-game losing streak to the Wildcats when they did that. So kind of like Alabama in this scenario, Northwestern, is going to be hungry to come in here on the road and get revenge after seeing a streak like that get snapped. Even though neither team had anything to play for, the stakes weren't nearly as high as Alabama LSU in 2019. Purdue, they're averaging 27.5 points per game this year, and what's impressed me the most is their passing game. Passing game is legit, guys. They were battling so many quarterback issues last year, but now this year I had questions at the quarterback position, and I don't anymore. Aiden O'Connell, 653 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's averaging 326.5 passing yards per game. And he's got a great wide receiver in David Bell, who already has 243 yards and 4 of those 5 touchdowns that we mentioned for O'Connell. If Rondale Moore is back for this game, and there's a chance that he could be, Purdue's offense is going to be even better than it's been in their previous 2 games. This Purdue team is for real. They have a lot of talent here. Northwestern, their strength is their defense. The offense has taken off. They've done a lot better, especially now they have Peyton Ramsey, the Indiana transfer, under center. That was a huge get for them. But their defense, they haven't allowed a second-half point all year. They've played 3 games. They've shut out their opponent in the second half in every single one of those games. They're allowing just 12 points per game this year, but they are allowing 192.3 passing yards per game. That's the number you might want to circle and think, man, at home, Aiden O'Connell might be able to exploit some weaknesses there with these receivers too, possibly being the best that Northwestern has faced all year long. Now, another key for Northwestern, you look at Purdue, their strength is passing. Northwestern, their strength is 205.3 rushing yards per game. They know how to run the ball. They're balanced. Purdue's allowing 186 rushing yards per game. It's not a good number. So it's going to be Purdue's aerial attack versus Northwestern's rushing attack. Which one gives, which defense steps up? And I'm going with the Boilermakers. Why? Because the Boilermakers are going to have a week off. Remember, they were supposed to play Wisconsin this past weekend. They didn't get to. So they got a bye week that they weren't planning on having. They're rested, they're prepared, they've had a lot of time to prepare for this Northwestern squad. That is good, but they're not going to knock you out. They're not that flashy, they're not that exciting, but they do enough to get the job done. But I think in this game, it's a hard-fought battle. It's won in the trenches, and I like Purdue at home in West Lafayette, a place they usually play very well, to beat the 23rd-ranked Northwestern Wildcats, and the Boilermakers will be at the top of the Big Ten West standings and maybe will be the favorite to win that division by the end of 2020. It's crazy. And then finally, we have a Pac-12 game up on the board. It's about time, right? I know we're only 2 weeks into the season, but we didn't have one on our board last week. We didn't think there were any, marquee matchups, really. USC, Arizona State ended up being a great one. Oregon did take care of Stanford. But now here we are again with Oregon, the 11th ranked team in the country, the Pac-12's best chance of getting a team to the college football playoff. And Oregon, of course, being the reigning Pac-12 champs and the favorite to win the Pac-12 championship in 2020. They're facing off against Nick Rolovich, the brand new head coach at Washington State, who kicked off his tenure there with a win, taking down a solid Oregon State team on the road by 10. This game is a trap game for Oregon. You don't want to hear it if you're an Oregon fan, but you got to believe it because you got to look at recent history. 3 of the last 6 games between Oregon and Washington State have been decided by one possession. That included last year's 37-35 win for Oregon in Eugene, where they had to kick a game-winning field goal in the final seconds to pull away. Prior to last year, Washington State had won 4 straight against the Ducks. And now I get that Mike Leach isn't with the Cougars anymore. Oregon's not going to have to worry about facing that air raid offense. But Rolovich, he runs a little bit something relatively similar. He runs that run and shoot offense. And he's got a good quarterback, a freshman quarterback, in Jaden DeLora, who in his debut for Washington State last week, his collegiate debut, had 227 yards and 2 touchdowns. This guy's good. This guy's very good. And Washington State was very, very balanced last week against Oregon State. 227 passing yards and 229 rushing yards. That's something that you would never get out of Mike Leach at Washington State. That's something that a lot of teams in the Pac-12 are going to have to get used to, facing a Washington State team that can both run and pass. But look at Oregon here. Yeah, they struggled early against Stanford. Kind of came out of the gate slow. A lot of Pac-12 teams did. It was their first game of the year, and it's in November. I mean, come on. It's almost been really an entire year since they've almost played football. But they beat Stanford 35-14, and they were dealing with a brand new quarterback as well in Tyler Shugg, who of course replaced the great Justin Herbert, who's doing very well, as we mentioned, in the NFL with the LA Chargers. Shugg had 227 yards as well, but had just 1 touchdown. But Oregon, kind of like Washington State, they wore down their opponent. Shugg, he played well, had some great runs as well. C.J. Verdell, 105 yards on the ground and 1 touchdown. The Ducks had 269 rushing yards, averaged 6.9 yards per carry. 6.9 yards per carry. Like Washington State, the Ducks have balance. The Ducks also, to me, have the defensive edge. Now, I know what you'll say. Did you watch their defense against Stanford? Yeah, I did. I know they allowed 413 yards. I know that's not ideal. I'm also taking into the fact that it was the first game of the year, and Oregon did lose some key pieces on the defensive side of the ball. I am taking all that into consideration, and I think that Mario Cristobal fixes those things and comes into Pullman ready to go. The defense plays better. They're facing a freshman quarterback who's good, but again, only the second ever collegiate game, second ever college football game. I think he's going to have a tough time against this Oregon defense. It's going to feast on him. I think this game is close for a while. Might be close midway through the third quarter. But again, Oregon, like they did last week, will wear down their opponent. They'll wear down their opponent with a fine balance of Shug through the air and his dual threat ability, and then, of course, C.J. Verdell, one of the best running backs within the Pac-12, maybe the best running back in the Pac-12. The Ducks go on the road, take down Nick Rolovich of Washington State, a place where the future is very, very bright, and a game where, again, it will be close for a while. But the Ducks do pull away. They remain undefeated, just 2-0, but they need every win they can. They have to go undefeated to keep their college football playoff hopes alive. So, guys, there you have it. Again, it's not the most eventful weekend in college football. We know that. Week 12 is going to be way better when it comes to marquee matchups. But we do know that November is crazy. We kind of drew that comparison. November for college football is like March for college basketball. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. There are going to be upsets galore over the course of this next month. You're going to see a few this Saturday. We're picking a few to happen this Saturday. So you don't want to miss it because you have to play every week. You have to play every game. We know we want to look ahead, but we got to get rid of this one first. And it's still going to be a very fun one and a very eventful. Our 5 biggest games that we could find going into Week 11. And, of course, we'll have our Game of the Week analysis coming out later this week, our recap on Sunday, and then, boom, we're on to Week 12 with some more analysis and more predictions coming your way. So, guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And like we mentioned earlier, if you want some of our picks against the spread for these games, go down into our description below and sign up for our expert picks. We're hitting 61.5% of our bets over the past 4 weeks. We're on fire. We're coming off an 8-2 weekend. Can't get any better than that. So make sure to go sign up for those down in the description below. Make sure to sign up for our Patreon account. Sign up for our newsletter. That's free of charge over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. If you love college football, this is the place for you, and everything down in that description is for you. So make sure to go check it all out. I can promise you're not going to regret it. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.